Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. I am here with Geeky Sparkles.
Hello.
And we're going to talk about comics again. This video is actually a couple days later than we thought it was going to be.
Yep.
But we've had some stuff going on.
We have.
And we want to talk about Demon Slayer numbers and how the media is kind of responding to the claim that Demon Slayer itself has outsold all of the North American comic book market.
So basically they're going with a from a certain point of view angle.
From a certain point of view, they're having a hard time believing it. I know there were some people talking on Twitter about it. They were like, oh my God, that's not true. Comics are fine. It's all okay, everybody.
We heard that before. It's funny because in the past when we brought up things like you know, with comics, oh no, you're full of it. You're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong. And then the pros were saying it later. And then suddenly it became fact when like the Beat and everybody started saying the exact same damn thing that we had been saying when we were liars and wrong, just like, you know, a year prior.
Well, that was like Mark Miller. The other day we did a video talking about Twitter, and he was like, hey, I'm finding out from one of the marketing executives at one of the big two that, you know, less than 5% of Twitter users or whatever it was actually buy comic books. It's very few comic book buyers are on there, and we had the editor of Newsarama, the site formerly known as Newsarama, questioning him. Questioning Mark Miller on that. Like, I don't understand this. Where did you get this data from?
From reality?
That's impossible.
You know, it's reality. You know, it's evidentiary support. You know, it's like, what I mean, we keep telling you this.
Yeah, so the reality is starting to sink in that there really isn't any excuse as to why North American comics can't sell better. It is the content and the audience that they've cultivated because Japan loves this shit. So we're going to talk about it. Before we get into it, please subscribe for more pop culture, news, views, and rants, guys. We're over 192,000, almost 193. Almost 193, almost at 200.
Yeah, we're going now. Let's go. Woohoo!
Yeah, so thank you for the support. So yeah, we had to do a couple of fact checks the other day because people can't believe it. It's impossible. They think it's impossible that Demon Slayer could actually outsell the entire comic book industry. Now, this is coming from comicbook.com. Megan Peters, who writes about manga on comicbook.com, and she's actually pretty good. I've said before that I think she's a pretty good writer. But she put this article up, and there's a fact check, an actual fact check on Anime News Network.
Well, it's the Anime News Network, but you know.
Even though Screen Rant has been talking about how manga is more popular and Marvel's trying to cash in.
Well, they have.
Too.
And we do know that they're doing Star Wars too. They're trying to make Star Wars that are done by manga artists and stuff like that. They're trying to make their Star Wars manga because they're like, that's what the kids are into. That's what we're going to get. And then you have some the anime-based series coming out because they're desperately trying to cling on to anything.
Yeah. And that's it. And this reminds me of like 2007, 2008 again, where it became very clear that kids were going for manga over, superhero comics, and everybody was trying to do manga, even though a lot of it was, I don't know, nanga. It was like weird Americanized manga. Like, let's just put some blue hair and big eyes on these characters. That's manga. Everything's manga now. But yeah, she said there's no denying the popularity of Demon Slayer. But now the question being asked is whether or not Demon Slayer really outsold the entire comic book industry stateside last year. And the answer to the question is not clear at the moment. If sales trends in the US remained untouched in 2020, the truth would lead fans to a tie.
I don't buy it.
No, I don't believe that either. But there is a slight issue of the pandemic to consider.
Well, a slight issue of the pandemic.
A handicap.
Whoa, wait a minute. Meanwhile, manga increased exponentially during the pandemic.
Yes, it did.
So if you're trying to argue that comics would have sold more with the pandemic, when people were at home looking for things to do, I call bullshit. Because while you're saying that, oh, well, if you're going to compare apples because of the pandemic, well, let's compare apples to apples to the pandemic. Manga still outsold the hell out of domestic comics. Pandemic, be damned. They still outsold you.
And here's the thing too, this points to the critical failure of the direct market, because if comic book sales took a massive dive, a big part of it is because so many comic shops were closed.
But you don't need comic shops to buy the comics. That's the kicker.
Well, graphic novels, or you can order directly.
Yes, you can order them direct now, and you can and you have to consider that too. But this would be interesting because this is one of those from a certain point of view arguments. But go ahead.
Yeah, from a certain point of view. So she says there's no doubt that 2020 put a major bust on industries globally in light of the pandemic. This was no different for manga or comic books. But
it was different for manga.
Yeah, people actually bought more. But production delays with the former were solved rather quickly. According to financial reports and various sales charts, manga exploded in popularity in 2020 with a major gain year over year despite the pandemic. In Japan, this boost was all thanks to Demon Slayer.
Well,
I don't
no,
think so.
It wasn't all thanks to Demon Slayer. My Hero Academia and some other ones did really well too.
Yeah.
But beyond that, they're saying, well, because manga got, because it wasn't able to be made or whatever. But manga was able to recover from the distribution issues or from they're not, because they're having shortages of paper and you can't get manga because they don't have enough.
Yeah, manga printers, finding somebody to print your manga at this point in time. There were collectors and industry watchers who were like, if you have a favorite series, even if that series is still in print, buy the books when you see them because it might be 6 months to a year until you see that.
Because they can't keep up with demand. Yeah. And even with that, they still outsold you. So, keep going.
According to Comicron, the site has yet to pull together sales info for 2020. Well, part of that's because DC dipped out. They used to just track the Diamond numbers, and DC's doing their own thing now. The issue comes down to a rift between Diamond as the distributor, being the only vendor for retailers, then Marvel and DC trying to go out on their own because Diamond had to shut down operations. No, they didn't. That's actually just Steve Jeppy being a pussy.
Right. And my next comment to you people was, how stupid are you that you only let your one distribution method be Diamond? Yeah. I mean, for all these years, I've been saying for at least a decade how stupid that is. Anyway, go ahead.
So at best, we can assume no change in trends happened in comics this past year. Bullshit. In that case, total units sold in 2019 numbered 83.2 million after dropping 1.2 million year over year. If that exact same scenario repeated in 2020, there were roughly 82 million comics sold in 2020, regardless of distributor at the absolute best, saying that let's just assume that things stayed the same. I don't think they did, though, but here we go. Now, compare it to Demon Slayer. This one series alone is published through Shueisha, who keeps records of sales from each region distributor. This means we know exactly how many copies of this manga were sold. It's interesting. The publisher actually keeps better
Right. I was thinking that. Isn't it amazing how they can keep their records straight?
Yeah. We know exactly how many copies of the manga were sold in 2020, and it's a lot. A total of 82.34 million copies of Demon Slayer were sold last year. This figure does outperform the best case estimate of the U.S. comics industry.
And that's one book.
Now, multiply that times how many thousands of manga series, and it's pretty bad. That's nuts in and of itself. However, there's no knowing whether Demon Slayer won hands down or not.
Okay, whoa. The argument has been that manga is outselling American comics, and Demon Slayer was leading the pack. It wasn't, you could argue Demon Slayer outsold American comics, but most people like us have been saying manga in general is kicking regular American comics ass exponentially if just one comic potentially outsold the entire market.
I think they,
from their certain point of view. Well, this one book maybe possibly outsold. That just proves the point.
Megan Peters is writing for comicbook.com, which has pretty close ties to the mainstream comic book industry. I don't think she can go out and say, yeah, it's pretty fucking clear that it's game over.
Their argument is, well, people are saying Demon Slayer outsold it. No, people are saying, well, they might be saying that too, but the people mostly are saying manga is outselling American comics, and Demon Slayer just by itself might have outsold the entire industry. So it still stands. Manga is outselling American comics, and that's with a paper shortage. So I don't want to hear it. I'm tired of this. It's like on a Tuesday in May at this time, they outsold manga. So that means
Daffy Duck.
I'm like, this is stupid. Manga's kicking your ass. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So what's going on here? And the commenters called out. They said, reaching much, it's obvious comic sales were completely dominated by manga. Yeah, the top 20 graphic novels in the U.S. in April were all manga. So manga's taking over here too. Now they'll take credit for that.
They'll roll into their numbers and say.
Yeah.
But here's what gets me. Manga was kicking their ass last year. It's clearly already on its way to kick their ass this year too. And they keep on to say pandemic. Well, okay, so pandemic by now isn't really impacting it would not be impacting as much now, for one. But two, even with the pandemic, manga sales went up. I mean, you can't say, oh, and then meanwhile, you have more distribution, you have digital and all this other crap you're putting these comics out as. Not having a comic store did very little to stop people from getting their books.
Yeah. So even Anime News Network, and I think what's going on, because they're basically like, well, we don't really know for sure. It's a pretty bold claim because there was this article out there.
Because they keep going Demon Slayer. They keep focusing on Demon Slayer. What we do know for sure is if Demon Slayer came that close to beating American comics by itself, all the hundreds of comics by itself, then the point stands that manga is kicking your ass, which is what we've been saying.
Yeah, the general takeaway. So what I think is going on is that the American comic book industry, the North American comic book industry, is ass mad that everybody is pointing out that manga, just regardless of how you slice it and dice it, manga is destroying Western comics. It's destroying
focusing on one thing. Did Demon Slayer outsell? That's not the point. Demon Slayer probably did outsell you.
Probably.
But even if it didn't, just by missed by a little bit, it's still one book beating your entire industry. I'm like, I don't care how we want to slice this and twist it and contort it to act like you're winning. You're not. And maybe it's because manga gives people what they want.
Yeah, I mean, name one. I don't even know if they've had one comic in the last 2 or 3 years that has broken 1 million copies, 1 million copies.
And one of the ones I can think of that they were touting, it broke a lot of sales because they put it in stupid loot crates.
Yeah, Star Wars broke it because of loot crate. The closest I can think of recently is probably Berserker. And that's because it was 600,000 copies, and that's because Keanu Reeves was attached to it and had a lot of media buzz.
Right, and it was, and they weren't counting until recently. They didn't even count things like Kickstarter, Indiegogo.
No.
Until their numbers dipped so low in the gutter. Now they start rolling in independent comics people with it. It reminds me of last year when they had the comic conventions online, and then I'm pretty sure it was like New York or something. Said, well, we got this much interaction when you take all the YouTubers talking about us and add their views to our views, because our panels got jack shit views, but because someone like us talked about it and we got more views than several other panels combined, they wrote our numbers on our videos into their reach numbers.
What's probably going on is that the corporate owners of these American comic book publishers are probably asking questions. They're probably like, why are your sales down when everybody's buying manga? Like, you should be doing better. And they're not looking at the obvious answer, which is the content.
Yes.
The content is not appealing to readers because they're Americans, when given the choice, American kids are picking manga over Western comics.
My kids do.
Yeah.
My kids don't even read Western comics. They don't care. But my daughter loves anything manga and anime. And it's because they're better stories. They're stories that, they feel like there's actual stakes to it. They feel like, they're actual characters that you can relate to. They feel like they aren't just handed things because they're a special type of person.
Now, Anime News Network is like, well, it's basically because superhero comics are dead. It's like, no, we're talking about all
They've been for years. We're still, but
we're talking about non-superhero stuff, too. I mean, we're talking... It's outselling the Raina Telgemeier's, and it's outselling even Dogman, and it's outselling... I mean, those are huge numbers here in the States, but neither one of those books come close to any... And we're just talking Japan, a country much smaller than America. And they're selling a ridiculous amount of comics.
Right.
So we're doing it wrong.
So what's your excuse?
Yeah.
Oh, you're gonna find another angle again on this day on Wednesday at 3:00. American Comics outsold Demon Slayer. Oh, we won.
We won.
You can twist and turn it, but what does that fix? It fixes nothing. It just means that you're spending more time looking for excuses than it does looking for answers. But that would, these are people that hang out on Twitter all day. What do we expect?
Yeah, but again, they have no problem taking credit for manga that's published over here and rolling that into the American comics sales.
Yes.
Take manga and take crowdfunding out of the equation and just report on actual comics produced just for the direct market or just as original graphic novels or whatever, and you're going to see probably less than half of the revenue.
Yeah, because
sure.
they're trying to, give themselves any little edge they can to make an argument that really isn't a legitimate argument to begin with.
No. So we're going to wrap this one up.
Yep.
Okay, so please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys, and we'll talk later.
Bye.